The world today is geared toward technological advancements. With all the research, inventions, and innovations, it is evident that mankind has evolved dramatically in the past years. To ensure that these advancements flourished, educational institutions aim to attain the 21st century skills in order for the learners to be proficient and competent in their chosen field. Greetings, fellow presenters and educators. My name is Mary Jean P. Dereza from the Technological University of the Philippines, pursuing Doctor of Education major in Industrial Education Management. The title of my research proposal is Cognitive Flexibility and Teaching Leadership of Filipino Educators in Bahrain, an analysis on students' attainment of the 21st century skills. This is under the supervision of Dr. Cherapin Barbacena. Now let's move on to the introduction and background of the study. Recently, the Bahrain Quality Assurance Authority, or the BQA, emphasizes the student's attainment of the 21st skills. According to the restructured framework, the 8 skills are described as follows: critical thinking, leadership and decision-making, language empowerment, entrepreneurship and initiative, creativity and problem-solving, communication and teamwork, local and global citizenship, and technological literacy. Promoting specified skills requires educators to possess certain levels of qualities, traits, skills, and knowledge to ensure that this vision can be accomplished. The purpose of the study. In this study, we examine and determine the level of cognitive flexibility and teaching leadership of Filipino educators in Bahrain, as well as the relationship between these traits and the acquisition of the 21st century skills. Specifically, it aims to identify situations and circumstances in which these factors are perceived to be appropriate, the extent effect, and the significant relationship between among variables on the level of teaching performance of Filipino educators in Bahrain. The significance of this study. Analyzing Filipino educators' cognitive flexibility and teaching leadership in the student attainment of the 21st century skills can provide evidence-based data for the benefit of educators and specifically to the Filipino teachers in Bahrain, the school administrators, to help improve the qualification profile of the overseas Filipino educators and to acquire the skills and qualities required to address the 21st century skills, and most of all, for the future researchers as baseline for their studies. Now let's move on to the research gap. Let's begin with literature gap. Although cognitive flexibility allows the individual to apply lessons from past mistakes and devise alternative strategies according to Anderson, that thus it doesn't have evidence on its effect on non-academic skills performance. And to reform schools, teachers, leadership is essential according to Fulan. However, according to the related studies, there has been no direct analysis of the relationship between cognitive flexibility and teaching leadership and the attainment of the 21st century skills by different types of students, despite the fact that many of these skills overlap or influence each other. Next, the disagreement gap. Assuming that the teacher has a high level of cognitive flexibility and teaching leadership, will it affect students' attainment of the 21st century skills? While teachers who are teacher leaders seek to improve schools both by teaching students and influencing others within their schools and beyond, according to Danielson, no clear evidence that it can affect the attainment of the 21st century skills. Now for the contextual gap. Despite a recent study concerning 21st century skills by Fatima Al-Jassim regarding teachers' awareness, this is in Bahrain setting, this is not sufficient to prove that these teachers can influence students' achievements. of the 21st century skills. Thus, starting with the Filipino teachers, we will explore the cognitive flexibility and teaching leadership capability of educators in Bahrain and its influence in attaining 21st century skills. And lastly, methodological gap. Generally, studies examining cognitive flexibility and teaching leadership use a quantitative method approach. In order to ensure a comprehensive study, mixed methods should be employed in addition to this approach, according to N. Ivankova. Mixed methods research requires the purposeful incorporation of methods in data collection, data analysis, and interpretation of the evidence, especially when it pertains to findings related to relationship between variables and their effects. Now let's proceed to the objectives of the study. The first objective is to explore particular situations where cognitive flexibility is being observed. Number two, to measure how often teaching leadership of Filipino educators in Bahrain applied. And lastly, is to evaluate the effect and the relationship between cognitive flexibility and teaching leadership of Filipino educators in accordance with the attainment of the 21st century skills. With the guided objectives, the following are the research questions. Number one, in what particular situations cognitive flexibility is being perceived in terms of enhancing personal and professional development, resolving conflict, meeting deadlines, and adapting to complex duties? Number two question is, how often can teaching leadership be applied in terms of teaching leadership on impact at school, teaching leadership on the level of trust among teachers, and teaching leadership on students' achievements? Number three questions is, to what extent do these two attributes or qualities affect the 21st century skills as perceived by the Filipino educators in Bahrain? And the last question is there a relationship between cognitive flexibility and teaching leadership on the attainment of the 21st century skills? Now, let's proceed to the review of the related literature and studies. On a global scale, a number of research conducted on cognitive flexibility and teaching leadership along with the 21st century skills. However, in this presentation, due to time constraints, I will only cite a few of them. Let's start with the cognitive flexibility. Cognitive flexibility is also the ability to switch from one way of thinking to another. This is also known as task switching, according to Miller. This happens most of the time in the classroom or in the school vicinity. As an educator, we can relate so much into this scenario. Now for the teaching leadership. Teachers who are teacher leaders seek to improve schools both by teaching students and by influencing others within their schools and beyond, according to Danielson. They can also reform schools and fulfill its vision, according to Fullan. On the 21st century skills, there are various studies define what are the 21st century skills. Majority of these skills we have already mentioned in the previous slide. Now let's move on to the local scale. The recent study published by Fatima Al-Jassim inquired about the 21st century skills set. Researchers found that secondary school teachers in Bahrain knew 21st century skills. However, there has only been limited research into measurement procedures for these non-academic skills to date. As for the cognitive flexibility and teaching leadership, there's not enough evidence or study for this subject of any research, particularly here in Bahrain. Now let's proceed to the theoretical framework of this study. According to Bilgen, cognitive flexibility resides at the interaction of awareness, adaptability, and confidence. His theory was presented in a Venn diagram here in Figure 1. Awareness, adaptability, and confidence join forces. In combination, these three pillars support the mental abilities underlying creative thinking, form a core part of function effectively. Now, on the teaching leadership side, which is an important aspect, coordinating the learning process and understanding how knowledge is transferred into practice, and it refers to sharing roles and responsibilities between teachers within the school system, according to Gordon. And figure 2 shows the Kentucky Teacher Leadership Framework, which was the baseline for the researchers' teaching and leadership structure. Grounded on this presented theoretical framework, the researcher came up with this conceptual structure. In figure 3, the researcher categorized the independent variable as the cognitive flexibility and teaching leadership, and the dependent variable as the 21st century skills attainment. The researcher hypothesis is that the null or HO, there are no statistically significant association between cognitive flexibility and teaching leadership on the attainment of the 21st century skills. And the alternative hypothesis, which is the HA, is that there are statistically significant associations between cognitive flexibility and teaching leadership on the attainment of the 21st century skills. Now, for the definition of terms, for a thorough understanding regarding the definition of terms, it will be posted under the description of this video, as we don't have enough time to explain all of this. Now, the question is why the researcher intend to pursue this study? Well, there are 3 reasons for this. Number 1 is it is timely and relevant as the development of students depends on the teacher's abilities and capabilities. So we wanted to see if there is a relationship between the cognitive flexibility and the teaching leadership of the teachers. Number 2 is there has only been limited research into measurement procedures for these non-academic skills up to date. And lastly, it will be an added element of knowledge in the academic field, especially for the development of the 21st century skills. Now, let's proceed to the research design and methodology. This study will be a quantitative in nature. It will measure the cause and effect relationship and will provide an explanation and prediction based on predicted outcomes. The target population will be the Filipino educators in Bahrain, and the researcher will choose a purposive sampling in the study. Now, for the research instrument, for this study, the questionnaire is the researcher's crafted instrument that will be explained through online questionnaires for respondents, related characteristics such as their gender, educational attainment, and years of teaching experience in Bahrain. The researcher adapted the cognitive flexibility question scenario based on Spiro with 4 related statements or scenarios in table 1. Participants will choose their answers according to the Likert scale given. Now, for the teaching leadership, research instrument is based on the concept of the Kentucky Teacher Leadership Framework, and it was written into 3 statement or scenario. With the combined analysis on conceptual framework and its interpretation, the researcher come up with her own instrument for the attainment of the 21st century skills using the following statement presented in table 3. 8 positive statements were crafted in accordance with the cognitive flexibility on the 21st century skills attainment. Number 1 question is, I can teach the ways how to acquire local and global citizenship. This is under local and global citizenship. And number 2 question is, I can provide an evidence for the students to communicate freely and collaborate effectively. That's under communication and teamwork. Number 3 question is, I can inculcate students to be creative and to be able to think outside the box. That is under creativity and problem solving. And number 4 question is, I can encourage my learners to pursue personal goals with strong determination and deal with frustrations positively. That's under entrepreneurship and initiative. Now let's move on table 4, which is the teaching leadership on the 21st century skills attainment. So now I'll move to question number 5. So the participant will be asked if he or she can pilot students to excel intellectually, produce literacy, and communicate effectively in more than one language. That's under language empowerment. Also, the participants will be asked if he or she can embody the attributes of being an effective leader and decision maker, taking into consideration the public interest. That's under leadership and decision making. Then the participant will also be asked if he or she can demonstrate how information can be processed responsibly and how things can be evaluated and analyzed sensibly. That's under critical thinking. And lastly, the participant will be asked if he or she can exhibit the skill of using technology through the effective utilization of its technological tools and contents with a full understanding of the impact on individuals and society. That's under technological literacy. Now, for the construction and validation of the questionnaire, most of the items included in the questionnaire were based on the related studies and literature, instruments, and analysis particularly drawn from the 21st century skills from the BQA framework. The first draft of the questionnaire was shown to the 2 doctors of philosophy professors and whose skills cannot be doubted due to their competencies as veterans in their field of specialization, and one as a social science university professor. Their corrections, suggestions, and comments were used as basis for improving its content, vocabulary, and style. Having been assured of its content, the researcher arranged the questionnaire in its final form. Now, for the questionnaires, we know that using Likert scale, individuals can express their agreement, frequency, importance, quality, likelihood, and other responses on a 4 to 7 point scale. As I've shown in the previous slides, respondents will be given an option up to 5. Now, for the frequency, approximately how often do respondents apply the cognitive flexibility and teaching leadership based on the given scenarios? The statement at the station, what is the level of impact teachers can have on their students to attain the 21st century skills? And for the relationship, given that, for example, the teachers have the high manifestation of cognitive flexibility and teaching leadership, what is the relationship between acquiring these skill sets? So now the question is how these questionnaires will be distributed. The following procedures will be observed. In lieu of formal written communication, the researcher will use Google Forms to deliver questionnaires to the target respondents, to schools, and through the Philippine Teachers Association Bahrain, which has estimated 200 plus members as of 2022. The researcher will call and talk to the participant to establish a strongest rapport between the researcher and them. By doing this, the researcher will be able to collect sincere, correct, complete, and factual information from the respondents, which will then be classified and analyzed as to their compliance or non-compliance with the study. The study will be conducted in accordance with the standard operating procedures. It will be the researcher's responsibility to supervise these activities personally in order to avoid threats to the validity and reliability of the results. This will be done during the first or second term, rather, of the school year 2022-2023. Now for the ethical considerations. Ethical considerations will be followed in conducting this research in accordance with the ethical standards. According to Myers in 2015, quantitative researchers must adhere to the following golden rules. What are the golden rules? First is honesty, avoid plagiarism, informed consent, and permission to publish. And according to Taylor, taking responsibility for the findings, maintaining privacy, and representing data are all factors that need to be considered by the researcher. Now, here's the references. And let me end my presentation with these words. In order for the 21st century skills to be achieved, educators around the world, us, must embrace the perception that we can influence students' achievements in all facets of learning, whether in academics or in life skills. I am certain that the 21st century skills will not be attainable without educators' dedication, hard work, influence, guidance, and support. Thank you for your time, listening, and have a great day.